Hi, everybody. I'm Roy Firestone, and this is our weekly show on Facebook and YouTube, live every Monday. In view of the fact that he is angry, and I believe he has every right to be angry, with his depiction in the HBO series Winning Time, I'd like to take a few moments to talk about Jerry West, a man I have known for more than 40 years. I did interview him recently for my series on ESPN. Unlike the HBO series, this is a 100% true story. Every fact I wrote about and interviewed about really happened. He had so many nicknames throughout his career. Chick Hearn called him Mr. Clutch. Early in his career, he was nicknamed Zeke from Cabin Creek, which is West Virginia. He always kind of loathed that nickname, but Jerry West, for more than half a century, was simply called the Logo, because the NBA decided to use his dribbling image as the emblem of the NBA. In fact, Jerry isn't even thrilled with that name either. To me, in a way, he wasn't the logo. He's more of what the logo was, and he was a silhouette. Because in the public and to the fans, he never showed you more than the shadow of who he was. As I said, I spoke to Jerry West, maybe one of the most powerful interviews I've ever had, and he got out from the shadows, got out from the silhouette for a few minutes, for 90 searing minutes to be exact. The man who, as a player or executive, earned 8 NBA championships, 1 as a player, 7 more as an executive or special consultant, twice the NBA Executive of the Year. He had 14 NBA All-Star appearances, 10 first-team All-NBA selections, election to the Hall of Fame. Maybe to him the greatest honor of all, a gold medal with the 1960 U.S. Olympic basketball team. Now you'd think, with all of those accomplishments, you would be talking to a content, self-satisfied man now in his 83rd year. He'll be 84 next month. But Jerry West is not content. He pretty much never has been, not today, maybe not ever. He has a palace of a home in Bel Air, a wonderful wife, Karen, with whom he has been married for about 43 years, raised great men. One, Johnny West, and his wife, golfing great Michelle Wee, have a beautiful 14-month-old granddaughter. But Jerry, by his own admission, will never be complacent. He's a restless man. He says even the concept of serenity makes me nervous. Think about that. Serenity makes him nervous. Jerry West has scores of friends, but most don't know him well at all. And in a strange way, he likes that. He is what Neil Diamond once called a solitary man. And it's kind of funny. For much of his life, this brilliant athlete, this executive, loved puzzles of all kinds, crossword puzzles, jigsaw puzzles. He admitted to me in this interview he never figured out the puzzle of being Jerry West. Quote, "I don't walk a straight line, never have. I'm too rebellious, too defiant for that. I'm an enigma even to myself, especially to myself." To Jerry, he didn't choose basketball. Basketball chose him. He said it was a sanctuary from all the chaos, all the pain, hardship in my family. The basketball court, where I mostly shot the ball alone before I ever joined a team, was a respite from going home. I didn't want to go home. There was no love in my home, he said. He didn't want to go home because the coal miner father, Howard, physically abused him and his sister. He was beaten and assaulted frequently. One day he saw his father batter his sister. Jerry took a shotgun, pointed it at his father, and said, "If you ever lay a hand on me or anyone else in this family again, I swear to God I will shoot you dead." For much of his teenage years, Jerry had a shotgun under his pillow as he slept. He told me in this interview that the anguish, the depression he'd suffered for decades is connected to those beatings. He said, when you had a father who beat you for no reason, you have a hard time thinking of yourself as special, deserving of acclaim. So I asked Jerry about forgiveness. Not for his father, but for his own liberation. Would he ever forgive his late father? There was a long, excruciating and emotional pause, and tears welled up as he spoke, and he said, "No, Roy, I will never, ever forgive that man for what he did to me and the family." Now, Jerry West has lived a glorious life by almost any standard, but he almost defiantly refuses to talk about accolades and achievement. This is a man who was fueled by anger throughout his life. He said, I played angry and with an emotional chip on my shoulder and a hole in my heart, he said. One of the holes in his heart that has never healed was losing his big brother, David, in the Korean War. He was killed when Jerry was 13 years old. That was about 70 years ago. And in one of the most emotional and heartbreaking moments during this interview, Jerry West looked away as his eyes filled up and his voice caught, and he paused again and again, and Jerry said this, my greatest regret in life is that David never got to see me play, never got to see me win the gold medal or play in the NBA, and finally win a title after 6 straight defeats at the hands of the Celtics. It's a pain, it's a longing that has never left me and never will. Many years later, with President Bush, he visited the site where David and his platoon were ambushed. He stood over a memorial for David and that platoon in South Korea. He said, I had many South Koreans thank me for my brother's service. I was grateful, but my heart will never heal, not even with the knowledge that he fought for someone else's freedom. And so the sadness swallowed him up. It ended one marriage. It threatened his marriage with Karen West, so much so that Karen wrote a letter to the Laker owner, Jerry Buss, begging that Jerry be released as Laker president to save the marriage, to save Jerry. Jerry Buss never responded to that letter. Said Jerry West, I was in the hospital several times. It was exhaustion, heart issues, and a deep wall of despair and medication and therapy. It didn't work for me. I asked him about the depths of depression. He said this, you feel as if you're alone. You feel like things are hopeless. You feel lost. Sometimes I don't even know how I function. I really don't. I feel like I'm fighting an enemy I can't even see, and the real enemy is myself. Obviously, it's about self-esteem, at least some of it. I mean, why would anyone like Ernest Hemingway kill himself? Why? Because he was a tormented soul. I've known families in which somebody kills himself, and the surviving members say, how could he do this to me? How could he do it? I could see where it would be easy to do it, said Jerry. People say it's a coward's way out. I say it's just the opposite. I think it takes courage. Wow. Jerry West never seriously contemplated suicide, though he came close to a hotel ledge once after a loss in the NBA Finals, and his roommate said, don't do it, Jerry. Just don't. Of course, he didn't. To this day, he's angered and disappointed with the Lakers, a team he played for, served for 40 years. He didn't just feel unappreciated, he was unappreciated. The Laker owner, Jeannie Buss, recently named the 5 greatest Lakers in history, and Jerry wasn't even on the list. That really broke Jerry West's heart again. There's a quote, the almond tree bears the fruit in silence, a quote that Jerry likes. He silently endured the pain and the angst of defeat and the loss, both in the game and out of the game, and the man just does not heal. And then, of course, the loss of Kobe Bryant, who was almost like a son to him, was almost unbearable. For 3 days, said Jerry, I was broken. I wasn't good. I hit the bottom. Kobe's loss was as devastating to me as anyone except maybe his immediate family, and I kept feeling what kind of curse and suffering I have endured if that wasn't for something that I did or didn't do in my life. Jerry West, as we said, is 83. He'll be 84 in May. He has seen the passing of his friend and teammate Elgin Baylor. He saw Superman Wilt Chamberlain die at the age of 63, also his teammate, Kobe Bryant, and 8 others in a terrible accident. And now he says he, Jerry, is in God's waiting room. He said, I never learned what love was, not in my family growing up, and maybe not now, but they have never, ever given up on me. And I could tell you, even though it's late in my life, I have hope, and I have promise of a better existence. Jerry West was a champion. He built championship teams too, but all the glory and the greatness belied his personal inner emptiness. He said, I expected other people to care as much as I did, but I also cared about their approval too damn much. It's also possible that even if that had happened, the approval, even if I'd gotten the verbal acknowledgement, it wouldn't have been enough either. The sad realization that I have a hole in my heart, a hole that cannot be filled. The word I keep coming back to is addicted. I was addicted to what I did, too much so, and I didn't know any other way of life. By the way, some of these quotes are in his book, West by West. And so Jerry West stays with the game as a consultant and a decision maker for the LA Clippers, and he is proud of the work he has done there. But the game is for him what it was as a kid. It's a kind of sanctuary, a kind of escape. Most people never heard or understood his torment, because in the end, he wasn't the logo. He was the silhouette. And you can't get inside a silhouette. No one ever could. That's our show for this week. We'll see you next week.